Okay, welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to be chairing today's event. My name is Alan Taylor. I'm a professor at SIPA. And today's event is sponsored by the Institute of Global Politics at SIPA, the Institute of Latin American Studies, and the Latin American Student Association. And the title is The Political Economy of Argentina and the Milei Phenomenon, an analysis of Javier Milei's presidency and economic reforms. So very pleased to welcome two speakers today. Jerry de la Palera, may need no introduction. He's a professor at Padre Vitella University in Buenos Aires. He's been there for a very long time. In fact, from the very start, because he was the founding rector and helped create it in the first place. So he's had a very distinguished career as an academic and administrator in Argentina. He's also done many other things, including being president of the American University in Paris, heading the Global Development Network in Delhi, and he's now head of the Fundación Bon, which is a major philanthropic organization in Argentina, doing great work, especially during the pandemic. So it's great that you've taken the time to come and visit us and give a presentation on this very interesting phenomenon. And to serve as discussant, my new colleague, Fernando Cirelli, who's just joined SIPA as an assistant professor, and received his PhD in economics from NYU a couple of years ago. So without further ado, Jerry, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Vicky. It's a pleasure to be here at Columbia University with so many friends. I will start with a question that maybe the background historian. The question is Milei going to change Argentina, or is Argentina going to change Milei? In the sense, is this phenomenon Milei, who was an outlier? It's the first time during the democracy that we have a real outlier as president of Argentina. An outsider. He's an economist who have. It's the first economist that claims to be an economist as president. So this will be a more holistic presentation. We know about that. I mean, what is the legacy? So the legacy is that we have had basically an increase, very fast increase before the elections until December of 2023 of the inflation rate, because the candidate of the Peronist Party started to have a process of money supply creation for political reasons. And so there was a spike in the inflation rate, which Milei claimed that with his policies, he avoided hyperinflation. We can discuss whether the disinflation program of Milei would have counterfactor will arrive at hyperinflation, but if you compound the inflation rate, we would have had basically something close to hyperinflation. So this was the annual inflation rate, the CPI, and the very difficult in Argentina, the very thing which is difficult in Argentina, that is from 2012, we are basically in stagnation. We are falling at 1.2, 1.3% in per capita terms, which is, you will find very few countries that have this type of record. Okay, so these 20 years or 16 years, we have seen basically a decay in and an increase in the rate of poverty. This is interesting because what Milei was promising, what were the messages of Milei in order to get this 53% of votes we can discuss? So he was very emphatic in dollarization, and dollarization, let's say, in the population that voted for him, percolated very well. Okay, because we have inflation. He said that the peso was not existent. So even if it sounds strange, people didn't know exactly what was dollarization, but he liked this type of message to abolish the central bank, to eliminate the Argentine peso. I'm not disputing in theoretical terms this, but it was a message, adopt the US dollar as the country's legal tender, or Then he was very emphatic of a new foreign policy to align Argentina again with the Occidental world of the United States, Israel, and the free world. He had clashes before becoming president with Brazil and China. He wanted to exit the Mercosur, that was also very emphatic, and he rejected the country's entry into the BRICS group. So this was basically. Then he advocated for a minimal state to eliminate 11 government ministries and agencies, to privatize all state-owned companies, withdraw public investment in infrastructure works, and go into a more mixed system with integration of the private sector, to end subsidies and monetary transfer to the provinces. He will do your WBC, and a voucher system for education and healthcare, and tax and export duties cuts. So if you see the change of Motosierra, the plan of the Motosierra, it was very strange for us in Argentina to saw this type of candidate at the beginning. And but this message was very important, and in particular for the young population. And what is very interesting, I don't have here there was a relationship between, let's say, the percentage of votes and the price of the square meter in Buenos Aires as a proxy for the socio-economic, I would say, not the socio-economic bracket. And when you see, for example, the PRO or Cambiemos, the coalition that was supposed to win the election, you will have, a positive relationship, I mean, the high socioeconomic brackets, have a high percentage of votes, then a little bit, a downward slope with the massa, I would say, the Peronists, and it's incredible, Milei has an horizontal. So he basically had votes from all social classes. That's a very interesting, I would say, feature. So again, what was the initial shock measures? And for me, as an economist, what is interesting is that was a shock measure on the fiscal side, and I would say not a shock measure in the external sector side, and we want to talk about the SIPA. No, there was a shock side on the fiscal side, on the fiscal, and then the other, the foreign exchange market looked a little bit like the massa model. Okay, so Milei then conveyed the idea that by applying their financial plan, they avoided hyperinflation. He insisted a lot that he needed this for. First, he did something that was a sizable official exchange rate devaluation from 400 pesos to 800 pesos, insisting to heal the central bank balance sheets, so eliminating its passing the liabilities of central bank, which was an instrument to sterilize the quantity of money at paid interest rates. Okay, and the drastic squeezing and reduction of central government expenditures. This was done very, very fast. In terms of the healing of the central bank balance sheet, what they did is, in some sense, a relationship between the treasury and the central bank. We were talking before. There is no such a thing as an autonomy of the central bank. There is a huge symbiotic relationship between the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. So what they did is a swap of the reliefs for something better, or more, I would say, is the field, which is treasury securities. So in that sense, they were successful in reducing domestic rollover risk, because they extended the maturity profile from 6 months to 3 years. The reliefs, the maturity was smaller and smaller and smaller, and the results were sharp disinflation with fiscal primary surplus. Okay, because Argentina has no degrees of freedom in terms of how you finance a fiscal deficit, except applying inflation tax. I mean, it was very, very difficult. Argentina, for the ones who pay taxes, has a huge, basically, tax pressure. Okay, Argentina had no access to external funds or long-term type of bonds. So the only possibility was to change this process of money-based creation, or even the intolerance to use other sources of fiscal funding. However, there was an important tax, because we want to talk about the SIPA. There's a huge discussion about economies. When is the timing to leave this huge distortion of the Argentine economy, which is a distortion of the external sector, impuesto país. Impuesto país was very important because it was a 21.7% taxes, no? Applied basically to the official exchange rate for different transactions. And the issue is that dynamically, the impuesto país at some point was equivalent of 20% of the fiscal rate. So this is important to take into account. And we know that there was an inability to secure new money funds by issuing more domestic, of course, external debt. Okay? And the central bank was heavily funding this fiscal disequilibrium. So here we have the fiscal deficit. The first part, I would say, is the lucky guy of Néstor Kirchner, with the surplus both, in fiscal and in the external sector. But then we have, and this is very impressive. This is very impressive because from January to August 24th, you have had, so Milei chose, I don't know how to call it, as an anchor, fiscal equilibrium. As the anchor of the economy, fiscal equilibrium, maintaining the sector. Okay, so this reduction in 30% of expenditures, as an economic historian, I have never seen in 6 months this type of figures. There is a 80% reduction in public investment, which of course in the future, initially would be, I would say, the takeoff of the economy, because it's not resolved. We have that public investment is zero and public works are halted. We have had a squeeze of 29% of pensions and retirement, and 39% in subsidies for energy and transport. And this is huge, 75% reduction in items in transfer to the provinces, and some squeezing in the wages of the national public sector. Of course, revenues, because we started to have in the first 6 months huge stagflation, huge recession, fell by 13%, but the impuesto país was what in some sense helping that the fall in revenues was much lower. Okay. I think the rationale, and Martin wrote a very good article in an interview about the rationale not to touch or change the foreign exchange market is to say, first, we have to clean the balance sheet of the central bank, because these elites were paying the interest on money, on money. And they started to have, this issue of what was the increase in the monetary base supply and the demand for monetary base. Okay, so they, in the first phase, as we're going to see, they decided slowly to freeze, the monetary base. But the monetary base is a small part of the definition of the liabilities of the central bank, because you have to adapt the leaks. Okay, so the monetary expansion, though moderate, was not as strong as the eradication of fiscal imbalances, which is okay. This is the motosierra combined squeezing through inflation, single inflation in real terms of expenditure. Okay, so this is the Milei's presidency and economic reform so far. Remember, this is a very important part for Milei. So if you ask the voters of Milei, what is the source until, let's say, 2 months ago, the source of support is to kill inflation. Okay? Is to kill inflation at all costs. We know that, okay, in order to obtain this immediate fiscal surplus. So we know that to kill inflation at all costs, you know, with a special, it was like what I call a financial plan. A financial plan that maybe was relatively well structured, but there was not really reduction in the consolidated debt liabilities of the central government. It was swapping, you know, from the central bank to the treasury, of course, improving the reduction or the increase in the maturity of those treasury bonds. So what are the current challenges before going to the SIPA? Because I believe that the SIPA is the biggest distortion, not today, but ever, to distort relative prices in Argentina. Okay? So we think that inflation, to have more disinflation, we find a resistance below 4 or 3% per month. I mean, it's difficult to, as an economic historian, I say sometimes that is economic science is more a historical science than a forecasting science. So, but I mean, it is very costly to continue with this disinflation process, with this problem with the SIPA, and I think what Milei and the team has is a fear to float. So at what time we're going to eliminate the SIPA. Then we have the energy and transfer prices. So you have two tasks: to reduce inflation, but to align relative prices. This is in economics a very difficult task to do it at the same time. The second issue is the interrelationship. What is the relationship between country risk and the exchange rate spreads and the SIPA? It's famous, you know, very tough exchange rate controls. You have an official exchange rate, which we see there is a crawling peg, an active crawling peg that adjusts 2% per month. Okay, and the country risk, you know, because in some sense, I mean, if you have this spread between the official exchange rate and, let's say, the exchange rate that are in the free market, or the contado por liquidación, or the MEP, you know, which I mean, this is interesting to see this interrelationship. If as an economist, I have asked some of the team, but if you say that you're not leaving the SIPA, it's because you're hiding some problems. So why don't you leave? You want to reduce the country risk. I mean, why don't you leave in some sense the SIPA and you just flow, because you have cleaned the central bank. If the central bank, you know, killing, I mean, in the sense reducing the risks was a problem, you don't have any more that problem. Okay? But the devaluation, because the devaluation that we had over these 7, 8, 9 months were lost if we believe in what we call the real exchange rate phenomenon. Okay? The second part is to take into account when we are talking, what is the situation in the external markets, both in the commodities or financial markets. Argentina has had the good news that maybe the Fed is going to reduce the interest rate, okay? But there is no doubt that the gains is the evaluation of the official exchange rate were basically lost. We have, I mean, Argentina doesn't have the best terms of trade at the moment, okay? So in some sense, all the expectation that you will have much more fiscal revenues through export taxes is not there. Okay? Then, I mean, we have weak signs of recovery in the real sector. So the first recession, the first month recession were totally expected. You know, but at some point, you know, what the government was saying, once we're going to have 4% or 3% of inflation rate, we will have a rebound of the economy. We have a technical rebound, but it's not clear without a lot of investment. So the investment is blocked. I mean, in some sense, because of the, I think because of this. And what it is much more, I would say, we have political challenges. We have political challenges because what Milei started with some coalitions. The first coalition was with Juntos por el Cambio, the party of Macri that was supposed to win the election and produce a disastrous campaign, but they supported Milei basically in the second round. But as you saw in the Congress, in order to approve the ley bases of this mega package was very, very tough. I will talk a little bit about the macroeconomic reforms that another very important person who is Federico Sturzenegger, I think is trying to implement, but as we see, those are much slower than to stabilize and to have an economic plan in macro terms, as we. And the risk of social unrest, well, we have been surprised that this was very calm. In some sense, in spite of reduction in real wages, but it's true that the government was in some sense very, I would say, attentive to increase in some sense I would say, the asignación universal por hijo, and which were not what were not here. Okay, so what is the problem here? And well, the problem that we know that the temporal budget constraint is not okay. I will go back to this in order to go to the SIPA. Okay, and I had a chat with Ivan Berni, who presented here a rationale of why. So I don't know why they maintain the SIPA for a while. So you have a recurrent budget constraint. The only thing that the government could do if they want to kill inflation, because inflation is the basis of 53% of approval, you need to immediately balance the budget. Okay, no chance to pass the budget. This is what paper we have. So, so the immediate jump now is not 2.6% of GDP because it's preceded, but this was very speedy. So if you talk with economists, this was very fast. I mean, the disinflation process, and this was very fast. Why? Because this slashing some of the expenditures were done in not by studying what type of expenditure you should slash. So whether they are sustainable in the future, we don't know. So we have to address the SIPA. Okay. So the SIPA, which means that a lot of the transaction in the current account, no, but in particular in the trade account, go through the official exchange rate. Okay? But on top of the official exchange rate, you have basically the fiscal revenue from the export taxes. Okay, and then on the import side also you have a demand for this official exchange rate. Okay, and the SIPA is supposed in general to be a transitory measure. It cannot be it's a long-term measure because of this type of distortion. And the rationale was exactly the same as the previous government, but this financial plan that was much more clean to prevent the peso from flying away. So Ivan, I had a discussion with Ivan, we call monetary and financial repression. In the sense that you basically. So the question is, is maintaining the SIPA and other capital controls audacity to sustain economic takeover? So I believe that this in some sense is blocking. Is it consistent to maintain an active crawling peg with the 2% monthly adjustment with the SIPA to achieve a steady reduction in inflation rate as well as a significant reduction in the country risk level? In the history, we have had experiences, with active crawling pegs. I mean, there was one in 77, 78 to 80, 81. It's called the Tablita Cambiaria. But the interesting thing that this is an experiment with exchange rate control. That was another. And then the question is, why not to eliminate the SIPA? So why? Because Milei in December liberated, many prices that were administered. Was many prices that were in some sense regulated by the state. So the question that my intuitive is, why you have had a fear to float then? Because you have had 27% of inflation rate. So maybe on the spread, the 20th of December was 10% between the free exchange rate and the official exchange rate. So if you have credibility, because you are entering into the government, so I think what happened is that they entered into a government without an economic plan. But that was very difficult than when you have Menem, Cavallo, that of course Menem took 1 year and a half before having the convertibility. Okay? So there are many positions among economists on the timing of abandonment.
Just quickly, what percentage was the impuesto país, the país tax of the budget in December 2023?
The impuesto país, in the composition, much lower, yes. Because they increased now to 21.7%.
Yeah, but when they increase that, the SIPA allowed them to increase the impuesto país. So
Yes.
So there's a good incentive not to take out the SIPA.
No, exactly. Now they reduced to 10, I think 10.5, 10.2%, and trying to get, other sources of revenue. They have reduced now but not for some, items of those foreign transactions. No. It's a trap. No, it's a trap because the recaudación by impuesto país were increasing, and it's a very, I would say, formula. It's a very relaxed situation for the government at some point. But it's not a conducive situation for what they want, is to increase or have investment. The investment is very flat in Argentina. Okay? So this is what Ivan, because I had this discussion, I think Martin, you were there, in the presentation of the model maybe in Colombia of Ivan, where he has this model and he said, okay, I think that the ones that we are supporting to leave the SIPA, we are in a naive situation, because this is a reasoning that if you were in the first best situation, and so he's a little bit naive, and so he analyzed, what are the taxes on the monetary base and what is the implicit tax, let's say, on broad money. Okay, and so he said how to tax. So he he called about the optimal monetary and financial repression. So how to tax liabilities in the Argentine case, the role of the SIPA, and he insisted in this first best versus the second best or the third best. And so he said, for now, this is an optimal policy for the law. Okay, for now, but when you see the model, so let's see this static explanation. When you see his model and he calibrates the general equilibrium model, I ask him, but you never eliminate the place of the model. Or if you never eliminate that simple, but I'm not dealing with that. I'm dealing that why it is optimal today to maintain the SIPA given the other distortions. Okay. So here we have the monetary base, and so we have the Friedman tau, basically is pi minus, so inflation rate minus the nominal interest rate. The nominal interest rate that could be 0, this is the Friedman rule, and he said the Argentine rule is always to tax the monetary base, and here you have the revenue for the government. Okay? Let's say the revenue for the government. Then you have the other road money. Okay, so if this is the Argentine rule, this is basically again the revenue, and what Ivan is claiming is they apply the Ramsey rule. Let's tax at the same level both type of money, which is optimal. Okay, and this is the revenue for the government. This is obviously much more elastic. No? Because as you tax more and you don't have the SIPA, this is without SIPA, okay, you can substitute, the way for another currency, because the other currencies, you are taxing your currency and you're competing with a currency which is not taxed or have a lower inflation rate. So this is interesting. So what this learning approach is, the idea is to put a corset. You are in a zoo, okay? So you're in a zoo, and we know that you are in a zoo. So with the SIPA, what you have is an increase, in fact, in the demand for base. Okay, liabilities cannot fly abroad. So this constraints, okay, have 5 minutes more. So sorry, I rush. Okay, and then because I want to go to the political, okay. So the zoo is a metaphor. He said the same with the SIPA. With the SIPA, it has an increase. And if you have an increase in that, but you still pay lower than the cost of the opportunity cost of other type of foreign currencies, you increase, in some sense, your revenues through extracting the difference in the rate of return, let's say, of the opportunity cost of foreign money. And so ganas tiempo, in the sense that this is a transition, no? Because you have to you have to eliminate the SIPA, okay? So, in summary, in these tough choices that Ivan is saying, well, the SIPA constrains the mobility, but increases the degrees of freedom in terms of policy, and what Vicky is saying, it's a little bit transitory, relaxed situation for the government, but we have to see what are the costs of it. Which in Ivan's model, he said to them, I don't have the costs of the SIPA. So it's yeah, you have
Minor issue.
Minor issues, exactly. But for how long? So what would the effects of lifting the SIPA and the transition? So what I did in order to organize what's going on, I tend to agree with Martin in his article that we should have, they will correct to me, tendríamos que haber eliminado el SIPA en un momento, at some point. So this is the trilemma that you have, an open capital account, you have a fixed exchange rate, you have an autonomous monetary policy, you have to choose 2 out of 3 and running. So this is the legacy. The legacy was basically terrorism because you have capital control, restriction to pay imports. You build up a huge debt in terms of imports that was trying to consolidate with the real, high commercial debt, to say high exchange rate spread. At some point you have 140%. In the fixed exchange rate, you have strange to call it fixed exchange rate, real exchange rate, which is below the equilibrium levels of appreciation. And of course, you have fiscal dominance. I mean, autonomous monetary policy was not autonomous monetary policy, it was an adaptive monetary policy to the needs, so we have fiscal dominance. Okay. And in the phase one, this is the phase one of Milei until July is what I interpret. So you have had, let's go to the fixed exchange rate. You have had a high depreciation of the official exchange rate. The net reserves compare, with Massa from minus 11 billion at the beginning. There was success at the beginning, minus 4 billion. Current surplus of month plus 1.1% of GDP. There was some easing restriction to pay imports and sending dividends abroad. They consolidated the commercial debt, and they were successful in the substantial reduction in the exchange rate spread. Why? Because they announced that they will freeze totally. They remind me as an economic historian, 1891, 1899, or you remember there was freezing of the monetary base, which was another, tightening of monetary exemption, except that the monetary base is not really the definition of the, the reduced monetary base, and the capital flows. And this is interesting because this is phase two. In the phase two, they have announced for many times that the SIPA there is no end in sight. So they have applied for in the second phase. They announced the active rolling peg with an adjustment of 2%. They dispute if you tell them, I mean, there is a real exchange rate problem, they insult you. No, but it's not. So you have to talk about the rhetoric, say calibrate. If you use the word calibrate in an interview, it's okay. Nobody knows what calibrate, but if you say that, I mean, there is a problem there, I mean, and of course there is of course you have a linkage between the general equilibrium model, between this fiscal strategy of disinflation and to reduce the spread, I would say, between the free exchange rate and this, which has to do with the central bank. Not because I mean, what they are doing is intervening in the free exchange market and dampen basically the spread, I would say the gap, between the and so the doubts come whether the central bank is building enough reserves in order at some point to be able to pay basically for debt in the future. There is a lot of maturing. I would say you have to pay a lot of debt in 2025, in particular 2026. Okay? This was a tightening of money-based expansion, but secondary expansion, I would say, continued. Okay, and then this is the situation. I mean, the country risk levels are still high, in spite of the reduction and the tightening the money base, and the net external reserves have remained stable at around minus 4 billion. Okay, so in this transition, in that transition, Milei presented the budget for 2025. It's very interesting. So he presented the budget. So the president, not the minister, not Ministry of Finance, but he presents. He talks all the time as an economist. He doesn't talk about holistic issues or terms or whatever. It doesn't matter what I mean. No. So the budget projections are very optimistic. What they did is from September onwards, in order to have the nominal numbers for December, they say we're going to have in between 0.5–1% inflation rate, end of September, October, November, December. But you can see that this basically will not happen. and then the consensus in the markets, they want to have a resistance at 3.5–3% of inflation. Then they are forecasting an inflation rate of 20% or 18% for next year, going down from 120%. The GDP it's expected to grow in 2025 and similar growth until 2027. Okay. But then I go to the budget arithmetic because I have no time. Okay? So what they did in the construction of the budget is first they calculated the revenue. What are the revenues updated by inflation? The main goal is fiscal rhythm at rajatablas, and then as a residual, I'm a classical economist, but it's interesting. As a residual, they calculate the expenditures. So as a residual, I mean, the sense of, okay, let's give this to health, let's give this to. So this is a different way of doing the budget. And we don't have the numbers and the forecast. This is, I mean, what are the main engines of growth? I'm finishing here, okay? What are the main engines of growth that economists try to analyze? Is foreign direct investment, as long as we have the SIPA, which, there are some sectoral measures like the RIGI, special measures to have big investment in lithium, in natural resources. I would say, I don't know, real wages, they have recovered a little bit, but they are not main engines to government expenditures, and in particular, public investment, nada. Terms of trade, well, except that there will be a fall, let's say, in the Fed rate that might. The terms of trade in the forecast is that we are going to have very bad terms of trade in 2025. Real exchange rate now. In some sense, in some sense, the growth of the previous GDP, we are not going to have. So the problem is whether this popular support, this patient or hope in the support of Milei will be sustained. So Milei is taking advantage of the balkanization or atomization of the political, I would say, parties, and restoring credibility in a country with multiple defaults and political instability is still there. And I think that's the resilience basically of the country. So are we living as in different times, or this time is different? This is an open soccer match. I mean, you don't know you really do not know in terms of probabilities whether this will succeed or whether it's feasible. This disinflation, and we have seen many programs basically with this. So this is the idea. I think we have a financial plan. I think the monetary reforms, banking reforms, and tax reforms are not very clean, are not very compact. And I dispute because once you said no, the SIPA will be eliminated in T+1. The other T+1 will be in T+2, T+3, T+4. So I have mixed feelings about Milei. I think he has the courage. Argentina needs a change, but again, I'm not sure whether Milei will change Argentina or Argentina will change Milei.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Fernando.
Okay, I have 5 minutes, and I will do, we said 5. Help to
In well front.
I'm a bit more skeptic and controversial. So I want to set the discussion in three terms. One is on the economist in you, I want to ask. Second is on the historian of you both. And I have a third point that is more an open question for the political scientist from the room. So my first point is on the economy. I think Milei claims success in many fronts. He claims success on inflation, on the deficit, on the parallel exchange rate, on the foreign reserves, and if you want, on the low interest rate in pesos. And my take is that these gains are largely temporal, unsustainable, and I would say an illusion caused by the fixed exchange rate plus the needed capital controls, plus some ad hoc temporary measures. Let me explain. I think we're seeing low inflation now. I mean, I'm not talking about the sharp reduction the first month. I'm talking about this stable 4% inflation because we're fixing the exchange rate. Fixing the exchange rate is a nominal anchor and is keeping all the input prices low. On top of that, there are conversations about populist measures about reducing the price of gas and services for the coming months. That's a temporal measure. On the exchange rate control in the parallel market, the government is explicitly intervening in the parallel market. On top of that, you have the huge inflow of dollars from the tax amnesty, what we call blanqueo. So, of course, you will have a control exchange rate if you intervene on the exchange rate. Reserves are not growing on the net, but they are growing on the gross, caused by the blanqueo. So, of course, you will have reserves growing if you give tax amnesty for depositors to leave the deposit in dollars, but that's a liability, not your dollars, essentially. And I'm less skeptic here, but I think greatly the deficit is low. The deficit is low because you keep the secondary deficit under control via financial repression. If you do financial repression, interest rate in pesos is very low, then it's of course very easy to pay low interest rate in pesos, which was a large part of the big problem of the deficit. I'm not saying this government does not have the right north. I'm saying we're entering a new phase in which we have to determine where these victories will hold. My take is reading the data now is a bit misleading. It's very, very polluted by confounding factors that are very temporal, mainly the exchange rate controls, which is the main risk. That's my take on the economy. I would give the historical context here because it's very related. So Milei, that's for you. Milei is an outsider. This is a new, fancy, extrovert guy on the political side, but on the economy, come on, zero deficit promise and control exchange rate, we have a lot. I mean, I was reading your book 100 years ago, history, and what's the main receipt? Just lower the budget, and you need a nominal anchor. The easiest one is always to use exchange rate. So, do you think this time is different on the economic part of the history? And if it is different, why so? It's so different. And you talk about the tablita. Do you think the exit from the tablita was successful? Can you mention any exit part? Can you mention any I don't know, time in the history of Argentina in which we use the capital control or exchange it as an anchor? We are at this point on the verge of we have to decide whether to leave this crawling play or not. And do we have any successful event? And I have a quote from your book, which is, the anchor is not yet lost, but is under considerable strain. I think we're at that exact point in which the anchor is very strained, and it's either you change plan or it's going to break. And for my neighbors in the political scientists, I think if the answer on the capital controls is not on the economic side, it's always on the political side. And I think the main asset of Milei is popular support. That's the only thing he has. He has not used this 8 months to gain allies, to add senators or members of the House. He still can take, I would say, controversial measures because he's popular. And so long as he keeps being popular, he can veto laws that go through Congress with 2/3 of approval. But Milei's sovereignty depends highly on inflation, which depends almost 1-to-1, at least in the very short term, with capital controls. So you have to decide. I mean, At the same time, he has been very successful in distracting attention. He took the intelligence office. He used intelligence office to distract attention. He puts on the discussion things like education, which is really peanuts from the budget, but gets a lot of attention and a lot of controversy. So can Milei sustain popularity until midterm elections? Does it mean that we are going to have the SEPO forever until midterm election at least? I mean, have you listened to him? His plan about exiting the SEPO. It's like the most convoluted story in the world. It's impossible to understand. Not economically, it's grammatically difficult to follow. And it's like changing the excuse, and you have to make the excuse more difficult than the Spanish of it, because it's just. Okay.
It's very difficult.
So I don't know. I think he's just making up excuse to get to midterm elections, and for that you probably need IMF money. IMF money probably needs Trump, and it's not obvious that he will get the money. What's the plan that?
I think the IMF will give the money even without Trump.
Yeah, he's like coming to New York and talking.
I'm pretty sure that's how he's getting to October 25.
So how is he? Is the SEPO going to stay? And if not, can he sustain his popularity? That's my political question.
Okay, the first question is that even with this transition, everybody is saying that the future is totally fog. There is a fog. So it's a fog to take very big economic transactions like investment, like real investment. It's foggy because what you said, in the sense, I think nobody will invest in big transactions. Everybody is looking and everybody is asking again. Argentina needs investment and long-term investment in which currency it is, in US dollars, in hard currency, correct? But if you have this, the question is, why do we have the SIPA? So in the sense that this is very strange. In December, you should be long in dollars, okay? 6 months after, you have to be long in pesos, which is the money that the currency does not exist. For me, it's very strange to understand that. So there is a huge disequilibrium there, correct? So again, I do not understand why they are not giving the SEPO. They clean a lot. Maybe what Vicky is saying. I think Martin was not in your article to eliminate the SEPO. It's very, very famous article that as soon as possible. So I think that as long as they do not overcome this fear to float, we are not going to have investment. This is the first thing. The second thing that they know very well, that the dollars are in the hands of the Argentine citizens or the dollars are not in the gold. So I think they missed an opportunity to have an economic plan to go to a big monetarism. Because in the big monetarism, you in some sense, currency substitution, if the US dollar is a legal tender, it's not as, it's not a problem really. Okay. So they missed they missed that opportunity. So I think that the SIPA is a cancer that forbids basically the takeover of the economy. This is the first thing I have to say. You mentioned, yes, we have a lot of once and for all increasing fiscal revenues like El Banquero. This will not be repeated in the future. So it's a temporary remonetization basically of the economy. But your second question was about
any time in the history that we exit an appreciated
no. I mean, no. For me, the most successful, and even the most successful modern plan that we might say that there was a small real exchange appreciation, but at the beginning, for me, as an economic historian, is a convertibility plan.
And the exit was terrible.
No, but the exit was not, no, the exit was for many reasons, if we can be there. I mean, the exit was it was bad luck and not bad policies, but we can discuss, was bad luck and not bad policies in the sense, yes, a very weak government with a Rua. So, I mean, everybody identified the fall of convertibility with Menem, but the fall of convertibility was because the La Rua was ousted. It's not that the La Rua resigned, but we can discuss on that. And in the convertibility plan, because of the reforms, you had a phenomenal increase in the total factor productivity of Argentina that was the most important in the 20th century. Total factor productivity, so I mean, you compensate for that, and there was a modernization of Argentina, because so so this was the most successful, I would say, plan, which of course I cannot. Finally, you have to exit that, and you will see we achieved a 0 inflation rate. There was investment, and it was the moment where you have had a boom in non-traditional exports, because everybody was saying there is a disinflation. It's true that there are some mistakes. There were some mistakes in the transition of the relocation. I mean, human factors, in the relocation. But if I have to tell you what was the most successful attempt to have, is there where a lot of analysts said, well, but in dollars it was very expensive in Argentina, but increasing productivity was very phenomenal, and Argentina was very intelligent in taking advantage of the global economic situation, because the interesting thing also is that Argentina does not have a domestic capital markets. I mean, if you see maybe it's trivial, you don't have a domestic capital market because you don't have currency, okay? It's a little bit, but all the other countries have 56, 70%, of financial assets or capital markets or in terms of GDP, and Argentina has 10%. So that's why we are talking all the time about foreign direct investment. I mean, we are the country that all the time looks at the country risk, where we have several defaults. But I think that the problem, so that's why I was saying you needed an economic program where the Argentines that have assets abroad, will be the persons inflowing capital. Okay, so going back to the history, the other stabilization plans that were Plan Austral or Plan, they were never successful. In this. So here I'm very skeptical, not because of the courage of Milei and the needs of macroeconomic reforms and the need of Argentina, but I don't think that there is a compact economic plan right now. Political? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just very brief. So, I mean, there is a reason why the exit is always hard, because public opinion doesn't want to exit, right? Once you're in it and you know the prior history, and you were the discussant of a book on sociologists that showed that the dollar is a signal for Argentine citizens in a way that is not in almost any other economy in the world. So going out of the dollar is a signal of what will happen. That's why it's very difficult. That's why convertibility was extremely popular. That's the reason why the La Rua sustained it until he was kicked out. And so I think it's very difficult. They should have done it in December, and they didn't do it because they wanted to increase fiscal revenue. And I think now my guess is that they are going to resist till the election with IMF help, and that they are going to do relatively well in the election for the following reason. I think popularity is going to continue to decline. It's declining now, but there's nothing in front. That's it. It's the only game in town. The Peronistas are divided, fighting each other over like who gets there, not even ideologically. They are going to vote the boleta única, which will make it much harder for a Peronist to carry on other lists. So the Peronist is going to get like a third of the vote. If he's able to get a third of the vote, which I think it's possible because he didn't run candidates last time, and there's tons of people for sale that want to be a candidate and winning in the provinces, he can get like a third in Congress, and then it will be very fractured. I mean, the PRO will almost disappear, will only exist in the city of Buenos Aires. So I think he has a chance to get to October 2025. And then he needs to leave the CEPO the day after. Otherwise, I don't know how he does it.
So let's gather a couple more questions.
You want to collect more questions?
No, you go.
Okay.
I want to collect your
Let me
question.
say something in defense, defending the CEPA.
You can try to show a bit of plots.
If there is capital flight, Milei doesn't exist. So the chances of the probability of failing if the CEPO is lifted, it's high. Secondly, the focus of your talk was more on domestic issues. Carry trade is there. Carry trade is a transaction by which people borrow domestic currency, they purchase domestic bonds, the exchange rate is fixed, so the return for somebody exchanging dollars per peso is huge.
Yes.
So the minute they lift the CEPO, and I think that's the highest risk that they face, they're going to be inflows of capital from the Argentinians or from non-residents, whoever has dollars, will be changed to pesos, will be put in a bond. And then if things don't go well, and with the risk premium of 12,000, a little more, things may not go well, that money will go out. So unless they put their house in order, and unless they build up credibility with something else, and I agree that the political economy is very important here, I see lifting the CEPO very, very risky.
But I think that I have a question for you, because is the CEPO inhibiting economic growth or not?
That's a very difficult question. Because there's a lot, let me tell you one more thing. I mean, there's a lot of liquidity in the firm sector. So there isn't money around, and the Argentinians have the money in the box in the banking system. So there are ways of investing without the CEPO. Okay. But without the CEPO, I mean with the CEPO, still with the CEPO. No, with the CEPO. But there is an issue of credibility there that I don't think that lifting the CEPO will solve it. And all the things that you mentioned, I think are behind the lack of credibility, including the real exchange rate appreciation. One thing we learned from many of the credibility models, the Calvo models.
Yes.
You have a real exchange rate. You also have, Martin also have that kind of models, where you see when there is a lack of credibility, the real exchange rate appreciates. So I think at the core of the whole thing, and based on what all of you said, is the issue of credibility there. And that is reflected on the risk premium and on the spread of the exchange rate. Yeah, no, I know.
But do you have to pair the CEPO with the 2% calling time? I think you can do whatever you like. One mistake I think was to promise 2% calling. If not, you can just depreciate like fake float in the depreciation. Second, the CEPO is a short-term gain credibility because then now it's eroding. You can put capital controls like our neighbors more strict, maybe no, but you need to put it's forbidden to buy foreign currency. You can say capital needs to stay 1 year, in this form or that form. You cannot pay dividends at this rate or that rate. You don't have to say it's impossible to. I think it's extreme form of capital crunch.
You know, and dynamically you have a problem. So let's suppose you maintain it simple at 2%, you know, right there at 2%. And you have some lotes verdes, some, and you are liberalizing a little bit. This will worsen the net reserve position, correct? So you have by maintaining the SIPA because, I mean, if you had is a recovery, there would be like an expansion of imports, which would weaken basically the reserve situation of the central bank. So maybe you can have something that is paradoxical. You can have suddenly a small, I would say, increase relativity level, but it could be reversed or something. You understand? Because we do not know what will be, I mean, whether it is sustainable in terms of fiscal or liquidity or solvency, even if it's more in the future. So it's not linear in the same. You have a so for me, I don't know, I'm a historian, I'm not a researcher in the sense to go into the models, but my intuition as an economic what I studied is that you can have reversals in this, because now the situation is that you have had you did all the travail, I mean, on the fiscal side, but you have gradualism in foreign exchange market, and you have shock here. Is this combination sustainable or not? Yes. So does Milei has time if real activity level does not increase, So Vicky was saying, arriving to 2025 with something strange as the SIPA. I'm not saying that to leave the SIPA means that everybody can, maybe you can have a Chilean type of, regime or something like a little bit more rational regime than what we are having. No? That's what I mean. So I think that the SIPA you can have, not like Veranito, but you can have a backward situation at some point because you will have problems with the reserve because with the SIPA, I don't put any penny in Argentina, any dollar. So I don't know if this is so. That's my fear. That the SIPA. I think that the benefits and the oxygen of the SIPA is dying. But that's my view because you don't have a genuine recovery of investment. You can see the numbers. A couple more questions.
Thank you very much. Trying to understand in that context what's going on monetary policy in Argentina now, because for this period I would have lifted the SEPO. But I can see from a risk management perspective, they see some risk and they have reaction function of politics to the possibility of having not just growth, but a sudden stop dynamics if you leave the SEPO and capital goes out quickly. The liabilities that they've had, they've been diminishing. And if you see interest rate policy, what's been going on with interest rate policy there, if you look 5 months ago, real rates on CER paper were -40, -30, -20. Yeah. Now they are +12, +10, +12. Yeah. So I see some work, and they haven't pushed against that. They haven't tried to repress that. So there's been a major change in interest rate stance in the government, which may be groundwork for reducing the SEPA. I don't know, it's not 0-1, but reducing the SEPA going forward, and you can pay more imports, you can pay some dividends. Now, how do we assess the monetary policy stance now? Because if you look at that, it's tightened a lot. Credit, on the other hand, is going up very quickly on a very small pace. So How do you think of monetary policy in the context of being helping to set up for a reduction of the SIPA? Is monetary policy tight? Is it loose now? How do you assess?
No, I think that they are still intervening, to reduce the spread by, buying. I mean, I would say the reserves that they are buying, they are. So they are buying.
The blend, the 20% blend, you're saying.
And the blend is a problem, but and then to sterilize and trying to reduce that spread. So.
And interest rates had a huge move, no?
Yes, I mean, as you know, my view in December is those M3 plus all the base in terms of dollars was very small to attack, have a huge speculative attack in terms of, so how the fear to float doesn't matter, I mean, and you will have. So you would have, instead of the devaluation, I mean, just liberalizing that, maybe you would have had a result where you would have 1,200 pesos per dollar. Was different in the convertibility. In the convertibility, the capacity to attack was phenomenal. Now, on the contrary, I mean, now you have, in terms of dollars, if you divide them 3 whatever, in dollars it's larger, correct? So there is this issue, but still the policy is in some sense not to. It's true. Maybe they are preparing to. So my question is, I do not know how they arrive with the SIPA to the midterm election. It's an intuition, and not. I do not. I couldn't learn from Ivan's, because if Ivan's, as you said, Ivan said. It's fantastic in terms of they do what they can do. As you said, you're talking about the third or fourth best, for instance, in your reasoning, your question. But with this reasoning, you don't lift any. We never live in the first best. So you don't, remove other type of distortion. Okay, I mean, so I do not know how. If it's true that with the SIPA you want to grow, well. It's another paper of the researchers will write about this. This is as an economic historian, my intuition. And as you said, I think they continue with the same type of policy. And I think at the revision, the IMF, you said it's very positive. I would say, until they arrive to the foreign exchange market analysis. Yeah. And they think they're right. Because there is a kind of procrastination with the SIPA. So what are they procrastinating? So the investor is saying, well, why they are procrastinating if they have an orthodox policy on the other side?
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, looking at your presentation, and let's say, and the credibility, let's say, of political credibility of Milei. I mean, he has been able to do a dramatic fiscal adjustment. That's a success for him. Let's say, finally, I imagine monetary emission has also stopped. Okay. So why the hell is there not a credibility in the foreign exchange market, which I think is probably a critical issue? Is that what is the source of the lack of credibility in the foreign exchange market? Because I think if that is solved, actually, because the recovery will come, but when inflation is down, I don't think it will come before that. So and for the credibility, you need the credibility, of course, in the previous program, let's say exchange rate was fixed, yeah. But there was a credibility of some sort that seems to be missing now, and that generates this, a stupid trend of appreciating the exchange rate in the midst of a foreign exchange crisis, which is still the problem. What is the lack of credibility for the foreign exchange market?
I mean.
By the way, I don't think capital, let's say in terms of spreads, before in the capital market, they will continue to decline, but a long way before Argentina has a possibility of being.
About the country risk.
Yeah, no, the risk margin. The risk margins
gap
are falling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they take a long time before Argentina can use the foreign exchange market. I mean, a public sector indebted, let's say, issuing bonds in the international market. I mean, that is a long way. I think the first thing has to be inflation, which, in my view, according to your analysis, the foreign exchange market is the critical point. Or am I wrong?
No, I know that, but it is linked with all the financial, it's a problem of general, there are linkages, to dampen this. I think that the doubts us if this drastic fiscal adjustment is sustainable. Because if not, I mean, if this fiscal adjustment is sustainable, or there are fiscal contingencies that it will not have the political power of support to try to consolidate this. That's I think the main problem. And then, doesn't matter. This is an accounting, I would say, with the zero coupon. A lot of the zero coupon bonds are not imputed basically there. So it is. So I think that the doubts is whether this fiscal anchor is to stay until they will get more degrees of freedom, because to have a requirement the expenditure is equal to changing taxes. No, I mean, and then you have to include for the consolidated deficit or the interest rate payments. I think that investors have some doubts on this. That's I mean, the credibility, I think, is so the economic agents are a little bit, they don't understand completely the model, I think. You see what I mean? I mean, you don't understand whether
the
it's a
government
speed.
doesn't understand it. Probably the government doesn't understand it either.
No, the government is not, I'm sorry, the government is not clear. And I think that, like Cavallo was phenomenally clear in conveying. You could be, I mean, and you could even, so I think what convertibility had a phenomenal mistake that was this mix, the fractional reserve system of the financial system, where you mixed Argentine dollar with the peso. So that's why I thought we were still más viendo of changing that, and having narrow banking for the dollars and normal banking. But that's what it was. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what is credibility? Is a political support problem, or is basically the same pseudo economic program that Milei has? I agree with you. I mean, not to solve the foreign exchange market is, I mean, it's a problem. Sorry.
Yeah, on that point, Jose Antonio, let me give you an example. They clean and are happy because they clean the central bank. But what do they do with the garbage that was in the central bank? It's in the treasury now.
Yeah, they swap. They only swap.
They swap. They have focus on flow issues, but are not attending the stock issues. So now all the debt that goes in the central bank, it's in the treasury. So to me, that's an example of lack of credibility.
Yes, because there are some doubts.
Well, in fact, you cannot solve it right away.
No,
One point, I would lean to leave the sample, but in December, we were doing a group with Martin.
Yeah.
The numbers you had maturing, not in M3, but in government debt, almost $90 billion in 1 year, pesos, plus $50 billion from import liabilities that you kicked down the road. It was risk. It was a precipice.
But I would do that by maintaining the consolidation. I'm not saying that this will be, we have to start without to do, but sorry, just to finish, but the SIPA started all relative prices of the Argentine. I mean,
The Argentine economy is maybe the economy in the world with the most distorted prices ever, and it comes from history. You distort it every time that you want to do something because you have fiscal problems, you want to have redistribution policies. Every normal country does through the budget, not distorting relative prices. So you have here the feature of disinflating, but still the realignment of relative prices, it is not done completely. So I'm not saying that it's not a very difficult problem for the government, but I still continue that part of this mess is this SIPA. It distorts the prices on non-traded goods. There is no more non-traded goods because of the digital revolution. I know what is a non-traded good. You know, I mean, everything es una bomba con esquirlas. Esquirlas que a todos lados va. And when I said that as like an economic historian 5 years ago, they say, why you focus only on this SIPA, which is a minor thing? It is, look now, everybody's with a SIPA problem. SIPA is a transitory measure. Not a SIPA with 60%. And if you want to be an open economy, like you don't want to be a closed economy, I don't know. Cuba would have seen the map of Cuba. You know, or something like that. So I don't know.
All right, I think we got a lot of questions and a lot of spirited debate. Anything more?
No.
Well, let's thank Jerry.